The bitter December wind whipped through the streets of Manhattan as I stood outside my family's prestigious Foster Gallery, watching through the windows as they prepared for their annual winter showcase. Inside, my sister Victoria arranged paintings worth millions, while my father discussed prices with wealthy collectors who treated art like stocks, something to be traded, not treasured. "Miss, you can't stand there," a security guard called out. "Private event." I smiled, pulling my coat tighter. He didn't recognize me, why would he? The last time I'd been inside Foster Gallery, I'd been escorted out by 2 guards while my father watched in stony silence. "Charlotte Foster is a failed experiment," he had declared to the board that day, my own paintings being taken down from the walls. "My daughter lacks the sophistication to understand true art. She paints for emotion, not profit." That was 3 years ago. I was 26 then, fresh from art school, believing that talent and passion were enough. I had begged my father to display just 3 of my paintings in the winter showcase. He had agreed reluctantly, probably hoping I would fail quietly and finally give up my childish dreams. Instead, I had dared to price my artwork based on its meaning rather than its market value. I had refused to inflate prices just because certain collectors expected art to cost more than their cars. In my father's world, that was an unforgivable sin. "You're embarrassing the Foster name," Victoria had hissed as my paintings were removed. "Stick to painting house walls if you want to play with colors." Now, at 29, I watched them prepare for another winter showcase through the same windows I used to clean as a teenager. But this time was different. This time I wasn't the failed artist's daughter. I was Catherine Chen, mysterious owner of the revolutionary Rise Gallery, though nobody in my family knew that yet. My phone buzzed, a message from my assistant. "Everything's ready for tomorrow night's opening. The press is calling it the most anticipated gallery launch in New York's history." I typed back a quick response, then looked up at the Foster Gallery sign glowing above me. Tomorrow night, while my family hosted their winter showcase, I would be opening the doors of Rise Gallery just 3 blocks away. Every major collector, critic, and artist in New York would be there, except the Fosters, who hadn't even bothered to RSVP to their invitation. "Charlotte," a familiar voice called out. I turned to see Marcus, my father's old assistant, hurrying down the sidewalk. "I thought that was you. Are you coming to the showcase?" I shook my head, smiling softly. Marcus had always been kind to me, sneaking my paintings into smaller shows when my father wasn't looking. "Just passing by. How are things inside?" He glanced around before lowering his voice. Tense. "Your father's worried about this new Rise Gallery opening tomorrow. It's all anyone in the art world is talking about." Of course it was. Rise Gallery had spent the past year quietly acquiring pieces that Foster Gallery had dismissed as too experimental. We had discovered new artists that the old galleries thought were too risky. Most importantly, we had built a reputation for valuing art based on its power to move people, not just its power to make money. "I heard the owner is some brilliant young collector," Marcus continued. "Very mysterious. Nobody's even seen her photograph." I thought about the countless meetings I'd taken under my new identity. The careful way I'd built my gallery's reputation while keeping my face hidden from the press. The shell companies I'd used to buy the building, the permits, everything, all to ensure the Foster name wouldn't appear on any paperwork. "I'm sure we'll all find out tomorrow," I said, starting to walk away. "Good luck with the showcase, Marcus." "Charlotte," he called after me. "Your paintings, they were good. Really good. Your father was wrong about you." I nodded, feeling the weight of my gallery keys in my pocket. Yes, he was. Back in my apartment, the top floor of a converted warehouse in Chelsea, I reviewed the final details for tomorrow's opening. The guest list read like a who's who of the art world. Critics who had ignored my work 3 years ago had begged for invitations. Collectors who wouldn't give me the time of day were now desperate to meet the mysterious Ms. Chen. My phone buzzed again, Victoria this time. I almost declined the call, but curiosity won out. "Charlotte." Her voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Daddy mentioned he saw you outside the gallery today. Are you finally ready to apologize? Because we might have an opening in our social media team." I thought about the stunning main hall of Rise Gallery, where my own paintings now hung alongside works by artists my father had rejected. "Actually, I have plans tomorrow night." "Let me guess. Another one of your little cafe shows? Or are you still painting murals in Brooklyn?" I smiled, remembering how she used to call my community art projects charity work for the culturally challenged. Something like that, I replied. How's the winter showcase looking? Victoria sighed dramatically. Challenging. This awful Rise Gallery opening is stealing all our thunder. Nobody's talking about anything else. But Daddy says it's probably just another trendy pop-up that won't last 6 months. If she had bothered to actually visit Rise Gallery's preview website, she might have recognized some of my signature style in the architecture, the lighting design, the way each room flowed into the next. But Victoria, like our father, only saw what she expected to see. Well, good luck tomorrow night, I said, ending the call before she could offer me another demeaning job at Foster Gallery. I spent the rest of the evening in my private studio, adding final touches to the painting that would be unveiled at tomorrow's opening. It was my largest work yet, a sprawling canvas that told the story of an artist finding her voice despite those who tried to silence her. My father had always criticized my use of bold colors, my tendency to let emotion guide my brush rather than market trends. Art is a business, Charlotte, he used to say. Leave your feelings out of it. But tomorrow night, every major critic and collector in New York would see exactly what happens when an artist refuses to leave their feelings out of it. They would see what happens when passion meets precision, when emotion meets expertise. Most importantly, my family would finally see that the daughter they had dismissed as a failure had built something revolutionary right under their noses. I stepped back from my painting, studying the way the colors caught the studio lights. 3 years ago, these same lights had illuminated my tears as I read scathing reviews commissioned by my father's friends. Reviews that had called my work amateur and emotionally indulgent. Those same critics would be at tomorrow's opening, not knowing they would be facing the artist they had tried to destroy. Not knowing that their glowing advance reviews of Rise Gallery's collection were actually praising the work of the woman they had once mocked. My assistant texted one final update. Your father just tried to get a last-minute invitation to the opening. Should I send the standard rejection? I thought about it for a moment, then replied, no. Send him and Victoria VIP passes. Put them in the front row for the unveiling. After all, what good is revenge if your enemies aren't there to witness it? Setting down my brush, I walked to the window. The New York skyline glittered like a canvas painted with lights, while 3 blocks away, the Foster Gallery sign glowed like a fading star. Tomorrow, everyone would be talking about a different light in the art world. Tomorrow, the daughter who had been told to stick to painting house walls would show them exactly what kind of walls she could paint, the walls of the most talked-about gallery in New York. I picked up my phone and sent one final text to Victoria. You're right, I won't be at the Foster Gallery tomorrow night. But trust me, sis, I'll be exactly where I belong. The night of the gallery opening arrived with a perfect winter snow, dusting Manhattan's streets with what looked like diamond dust. I stood in Rise Gallery's private office, watching the growing crowd through one-way glass. Black cars lined the street, depositing the elite of the art world onto our red carpet. Ms. Chen. My assistant Sarah appeared with my evening's wardrobe. Everything's ready. The critics are already calling it the event of the year. I slipped into the black Valentino dress, worth more than my father had offered to pay for my entire first collection. My hair, once criticized by Victoria as too artistic, was now styled in the sleek, sophisticated manner expected of New York's top gallery owner. Has the Foster family arrived? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I had been watching the entrance like a hawk. Your father and sister just pulled up. They're making quite an entrance. Of course they were. I moved to the window, watching Victoria emerge from their Mercedes in a dress that probably cost as much as some of our paintings. My father followed, his expression a mix of curiosity and disdain as he surveyed the crowd. They're telling everyone that Rise Gallery is just a passing fad, Sarah reported, checking her tablet. Your sister just loudly announced that real art needs heritage, not hype. I smiled, touching the small key I wore on a chain around my neck, the key to my first studio where I'd painted after being thrown out of Foster Gallery. Let's see if she still believes that in an hour. The gallery's main hall was a cathedral of light and shadow, designed specifically to challenge the sterile corporate atmosphere of traditional galleries like Foster's. Where they hung paintings in rigid lines, we created conversations between pieces. Where they used harsh spotlights, we had engineered a lighting system that made colors dance. 5 minutes until the official opening, Sarah announced. The press is ready for Ms. Chen's grand entrance. I took one final look in the mirror. Gone was the failed artist my family had mocked. In her place stood someone they wouldn't recognize, someone they had created with their cruelty. Send them in, I instructed. But hold the Fosters in the front lobby for a few extra minutes. Let them feel what it's like to wait. Through the security feeds, I watched the crowd flow into the main gallery. Critics gasped at their first sight of our collection. Collectors immediately began making notes. And there, in the lobby, my father and sister waited impatiently, their VIP passes doing nothing to speed their entry. This is outrageous, Victoria complained to anyone who would listen. Don't they know who we are? Finally, they were allowed in. I watched them enter, their faces shifting from annoyance to shock as they took in the space. My father stopped dead in his tracks, staring at a massive canvas on the central wall, one of mine, though he didn't know it yet. The artist lineup is remarkable, I heard one critic tell him. Ms. Chen has an eye for talent that makes traditional galleries look positively obsolete. My father's jaw tightened. If only he knew that Ms. Chen had learned about talent by watching him reject it year after year. At exactly 8 o'clock, the lights dimmed slightly. Sarah's voice came over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and owner of Rise Gallery, Ms. Catherine Chen. I stepped out onto the small platform we had constructed for this moment. The crowd turned, cameras flashed, and there in the front row my father and sister froze in mid-conversation. Good evening, I said into the microphone, watching their faces transform from polite interest to absolute shock. Or should I say, hello, Dad. Hello, Victoria. The room erupted in whispers. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. My father's face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. For those just learning my real name, yes, I'm Charlotte Foster. 3 years ago, my father declared me a failed artist and had me thrown out of his gallery. Tonight, I'm pleased to welcome him and my sister to mine. Cameras swung between me and my family. Critics who had panned my work 3 years ago suddenly looked ill. Victoria tried to pull my father toward the exit, but he stood rooted to the spot. Rise Gallery represents everything the art world needs but traditional galleries fear: emotion, innovation, and truth. Every artist hanging on these walls was rejected by establishments like Foster Gallery. Every piece was deemed too risky, too emotional, too real. I descended the platform steps, moving closer to my family. 3 years ago I was told to stick to painting house walls. So I built my own walls. I built them strong enough to support not just my art, but the work of every artist who's ever been told they're not good enough by people too afraid to embrace change. The crowd parted as I approached my father. Up close, I could see the conflicting emotions warring on his face: anger, embarrassment, and something that might have been pride if he knew how to show it. Charlotte, he started, his voice hoarse. This is unexpected. The correct word is impressive, Dad. Or perhaps, successful? I know how much you value success. Victoria found her voice, though it shook. You did all this just to spite us? Created this whole gallery just for revenge? I laughed, the sound echoing off the walls I had designed. Oh, Victoria. Not everything is about you. I created this gallery because the art world needed it. Because artists needed it. The fact that it proves you both tragically wrong about me? That's just a delicious bonus. I turned to address the crowd again. Tonight's showcase features works by 30 artists who were rejected by traditional galleries. Their pieces have already been valued at more than triple what they were offered elsewhere. And the centerpiece. I gestured to the massive canvas that had stopped my father in his tracks earlier. This piece, which several of you have already offered to purchase for remarkable sums, is one of mine. The same style, same emotion, same vision I was criticized for 3 years ago. Funny how value changes when it doesn't have the Foster name attached to it, isn't it, Dad? My father stepped closer to the painting, really seeing it for the first time. This is extraordinary, Charlotte. I know, I replied simply. I knew it 3 years ago too. But you were too busy protecting your gallery's reputation to see what was right in front of you. The event continued around us, but the dynamic had shifted. Critics who had been sucking up to my father all evening now clustered around me. Collectors who had dismissed my work years ago competed for my attention. And through it all, my father and sister stood increasingly isolated, watching their influence visibly drain away. Miss Chen, a major collector approached, deliberately using my professional name. I'd like to discuss acquiring several pieces. Including yours. I smiled, noting how Victoria flinched at the exchange. Of course. Though I should warn you, my prices reflect the true value of emotion in art. I never discount passion. As the evening wound down, I found my father standing alone in front of my centerpiece painting. The crowd had thinned, but the buzz of success still filled the air. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. "Why all the secrecy? Would you have believed in Rise Gallery if you knew it was mine? Would you have given Charlotte Foster's vision the same respect you gave Catherine Chen's?" He had no answer because we both knew the truth. "The Foster Gallery Winter Showcase opens tomorrow night," he said finally. "We would be honored to display some of your work." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, Dad. You don't get to capitalize on my success now. Rise Gallery is my legacy, not yours. And unlike you, I don't need the Foster name to prove my worth." After the last guests departed, I stood in my gallery, and felt the space breathe with possibility. Tomorrow the art world would be buzzing about Charlotte Foster's triumphant return. Critics would scramble to revise their old opinions. Collectors would brag about being among the first to recognize Rise Gallery's vision. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of victory, I thought about that scared, hurt artist from 3 years ago. The one who had been told her passion was a weakness, her emotion a flaw. She hadn't needed revenge or validation. She had just needed a chance to prove what she already knew. That true art, like true success, comes from being exactly who you are. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Dad wants to discuss a partnership between our galleries." I typed back a simple response. "I don't paint house walls, remember? And I certainly don't need your walls anymore. I built my own, and they're far more valuable than anything the Foster name could offer." Then I turned off my phone, walked to my centerpiece painting, and stood before it in the perfect lighting I had designed. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. Sometimes it's simply proving yourself right, spectacularly, undeniably, irrevocably right. And as I stood there, surrounded by the art I had been told would never succeed, I realized that my father had taught me one valuable lesson. In both art and life, the most powerful statement you can make is refusing to let others define your worth. Rise Gallery wasn't just my success story, it was my masterpiece. And unlike the paintings my father traded like stocks, this was one piece of art that would never be for sale.